Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today is June 4th and in this video we are going to be stepping into the world of the Senate. I'm going to be making my predictions for who I think will win in the Senate race. So let's start from the least competitive to the most competitive. As you can see, I have already made some calls such as New York will obviously be a Democratic state, Oklahoma, Republican, and so on. So let's start with Alaska. Alaska will be a Republican state. And the reason I didn't have it in already as a safe Republican state is because of this reason. There is a ranked choice voting system being used in Alaska. And this system means that you pick who you want to win. So you pick, let's say a Republican might pick Kelly Tshibaka to win. And if Tshibaka for some reason didn't get enough votes to have a chance of winning, then her voters' second choice would get their votes. So coming from the other side, if a Democrat, say, were to run and win 10% of the vote, and then have the least votes of the candidates in that round, then those votes would be transferred. And this means that Lisa Murkowski, the incumbent senator from Alaska, will likely win. This is because all of those who are left, the Democrats, the independents, almost everyone who is running, except for Tshibaka herself, will likely have most of their votes transferred to Murkowski, because Murkowski and Tshibaka are the main two candidates. The Democratic Party in Alaska is really weak. This because Alaska is known for having an independent streak, very moderate. So I think Lisa Murkowski will win this race, and therefore it will be Republican. Moving on, we come to our next state, which is Utah. Utah, I expect to be a likely Republican state. Why only likely, though? Isn't Utah one of the most Republican states? Well, yes, it is. But something has happened, which is previously polling predicted a three-way race between Republican incumbent Mike Lee, a Democratic candidate of some sort, and Evan McMullen, a relatively conservative or very conservative independent, but not a Trump supporter. And the Democrats in Utah quickly realized they weren't going to win. There's no way. So they decided to endorse Evan McMullen, who is an independent and will now be expected to win a large majority, if not almost entirely, the Democratic vote. Thus, we're going to see a two-horse race between Republican Mike Lee and Evan McMullen. Additionally, looking at the hypothetical polling, you can see that Mike Lee was polling around 40% of the vote with around 30%-ish undecided. This means that Evan McMullen still has a chance to win. It's very unlikely, but he still has a chance. Next up, we have here the race in Missouri. Missouri is also a likely Republican state. This is because, for the most part, if you look at polling, candidates like Vicky Hartzler are supposed to absolutely annihilate their Democratic opponents. However, this ignores the fact that Eric Greitens is currently polling ahead of other Republicans in the race. And Eric Greitens is a very controversial candidate, which has led to a lack of a very strong Republican candidate. He's only winning by around 3.5%, maybe around 5% in polls, which means that this race is very, very, very undecided. Now, are Democrats going to win? Probably not, but there's still a chance. Next up, we have Iowa. Iowa is going to be a Republican. Why? Well, very simple. Chuck Grassley is an incumbent senator who is very popular, and while the Democratic candidate might be strong, this is a very strong Trump state in a red wave year. So there's not much more to say. Next, we have Colorado. Colorado is very similar. It's a Democratic incumbent, Michael Bennet. He's very popular, and he's running way ahead of Republican candidates. So this is going to be a likely Democrats. Next, we start to get to the more competitive races. We see in Florida, Marco Rubio versus Democrat Val Demings. And while this could have been competitive if it was not going to be a red wave year due to polling and issues like inflation, among other things. No, it's not competitive anymore. Republican Marco Rubio has around a 9-point average, and it seems to only be increasing. Now, there have been some outlying polls that show Demings leading, or maybe Demings coming close, but for the most part, yeah, this is going to be a Republican victory. Next, we have Ohio. Now, Ohio should be a very easy Trump state, Trump Republican. J.D. Vance, endorsed by Trump, he won the primary, but he only won with 30% of the vote. And there were some moderate Republicans, or moderate-ish Republicans running. Additionally, the Democrats nominated Tim Ryan, who is a very popular Democrat in Ohio, probably the only candidate who could make this competitive. And he has. Polling that has come out recently shows that Tim Ryan is essentially polling relatively even, maybe just behind Vance. So I'm going to put this in the lean category. It's not out of reach for Democrats, but it's unlikely. Next, we have New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, just like Ohio, there was one candidate on the Republican side who could possibly win. And that candidate is no longer running. It was going to be Governor Chris Sununu, but he decided not to run. He wanted to stay as governor. Then there were a bunch of other Republicans like Corey Lewandowski, Kelly Ayotte, etc., who all ran. It seems Don Bolduc, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is going to be the Republican candidate, and he's running behind Maggie Hassan, just like in Ohio, where Vance is running ahead. So that's going to be in the lean category. Now we're getting towards the very close races. We have Ted Budd versus Cherry Beasley. Ted Budd is winning by around 5% in most polls, but there's a healthy amount of undecided voters. If somehow something happens where the Democrats were able to turn this race around, the Democrats could, of course, still win. But for now, every single poll in this race has had Republicans slightly leading. Thus, North Carolina will likely, or I guess leanly, be a Republican state. Next, we come to Wisconsin. Now, Ron Johnson had previously said he would not be running, or well, not that he wouldn't be running, but rather that he was considering not running in this race. And a bunch of Democrats jumped in, which is why you see 4 different polls of Ron Johnson versus a Democrat. And all of them agree, this race is competitive. However, in a Republican wave year, immediately after an election where Trump almost won Wisconsin, I think that this is going to be a tilt-red state. Next, we have Nevada. Nevada will see likely Adam Laxalt, Trump-endorsed, versus Catherine Cortez Masto. Cortez Masto is a Democratic candidate, but she's relatively unpopular in Nevada, and this has given Laxalt an opening. Additionally, the strong conservative trends of the Latinx community in Nevada has helped Laxalt close the gap, and now it seems that this is going to be a toss-up. However, Cortez Masto still has the benefit of the incumbency, and it looks like Biden has reached his floor in the approval ratings. Thus, I believe that Cortez Masto does win this race, but very, very close. Next, we have Arizona. Now, in Arizona, there are 4 candidates who have had polling versus incumbent Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly has been winning against all of them, but recently, something happened. While here you can see in the polls, there were 3 main candidates, Brnovich, Lamont, and Masters. However, Masters has now been endorsed by Trump, which likely will give him a boost in what was a close race, meaning Masters will likely win. Masters is a very fringe candidate in the Republican caucus. He is very anti-abortion, very anti-gay marriage, very anti-birth control, etc. Thus, I believe that this is going to be a Mark Kelly win, although not as much as the polls currently show. Now, you can see it's a 49-49 Senate in this hypothetical. We still have 2 states, Georgia and Pennsylvania. Now, in Georgia, as expected, it's very close. Herschel Walker was from Texas. He played for Georgia as a college football player. He's a great friend of Trump. He was endorsed by him, running against Raphael Warnock, the incumbent. This is seen essentially a 50-50 split. There's really no one who can tell you they know who will win. I am going to be saying that Walker will win this race. Well, why? Well, one, in Georgia, the polls are basically correct and Walker has been slightly winning. Therefore, we're going to say that Walker will win this race, but probably within 1%, just like the 2020 election. Now you see 50 Republicans versus 49 Democrats. The final seat that's going to determine if the Republicans hold the chamber or if the Democrats, with their independent allies and Kamala Harris as the vice president, hold the chamber. And in this race, we have Democrat John Fetterman versus newly crowned Republican victor Dr. Oz. Now, there's only been one poll, and this was way back in December of 2021, which showed Fetterman leading. Now, we can assume that the Democrats are very united around Fetterman. He absolutely annihilated his Democratic opponents in the primary, while Dr. Oz struggled to a victory within 1% versus David McCormick, and with only around 33% of the vote. Thus, I strongly believe that Fetterman will win this race. However, it's not going to be a massive victory. I think this is also a tilt state, giving Democrats control of the chamber in 2022. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.